The Galactic Council chamber shimmered with light from 1,000 worlds, each seat filled with delegates from across the stars. The air was heavy, charged with both arrogance and fear, the kind that only came when power meant uncertainty. For centuries, the Council had governed the galaxy with absolute authority. Laws were made here, wars ended here, and species decided their fates beneath the shimmering banners of unity. But this day, unity was far from the truth. In the center stood an empty seat. Cold. Untouched. The seat once belonging to Earth. Humanity. They had walked away decades ago, quietly, without fanfare. One day, their ambassadors stopped attending sessions. Their ships stopped answering hails. Their colonies sealed their gates. No one knew why. Many believed the humans were simply tired of politics. Others whispered that they were planning something. But none dared to say it aloud, that maybe, just maybe, humanity had transcended the need for the Council altogether. Ambassador Tvar of the Klar Dominion tapped his claws against the desk. "We cannot allow this silence to continue," he hissed. "Humanity's departure destabilizes the border sectors. Their colonies no longer report trade numbers. Their mining worlds have gone dark. If they continue this isolation, the economic collapse could..." "Could what?" interrupted a deep voice from across the hall. "Damage your profits?" The chamber turned. It was Admiral Zurith of the Lithic Combine, his armor gleaming like obsidian. "Humans made their choice. Let them rot in their isolation. They were always too emotional, too unpredictable. It's better this way." A ripple of murmurs passed through the council. Some nodded in agreement. Others shifted uneasily. Everyone remembered the last time humanity had been underestimated. A flicker of memory echoed through the minds of those old enough to recall the siege of Loren, when a single Terran carrier held off 3 fleets. The humans had fought not for conquest, but for principle. They were terrifying in their conviction, almost mechanical in their determination. But that was long ago. The galaxy had changed. The humans were gone. The Speaker of the Council, an ancient being of light and energy known only as Aerith, drifted forward. "We cannot continue to debate ghosts," it said, voice resonating like thunder in water. "Humanity chose exile. The Council will move forward without them." A final vote was cast. The motion passed. The Terran Accord was officially revoked. Humanity was no longer recognized as a member civilization. Their technology, territories, and influence were to be classified as not essential. And with that, humanity was erased from the galactic ledger. Years passed. The galaxy moved on. Trade continued. Wars came and went. The Council remained in control until the disappearances began. At first, they were small, mining outposts, trade convoys, research vessels. Ships would jump into the dark and simply never return. Then, entire colonies went silent. Worlds that had thrived under the Council's influence were now nothing but static on comms. The outer sectors grew restless. Patrol fleets doubled. Fear whispered through the void. No one spoke of it openly, but everyone knew what the patterns resembled. The precision, the silence, the efficiency, it was human. Inside the central archives, data analysts began comparing the attack signatures. All of them matched ancient Terran military doctrine. Every strike followed the same pattern: infiltration, extraction, total silence. Someone, or something, was cleaning up the galaxy's borders. On the 4th rotation of the 927th Council year, a fleet belonging to the Vrak Syndicate vanished entirely, while stationed near the Orion Rift. 27 ships. No distress call. No debris. Just gone. When the first images came through the recovered data fragments, every being in the Council chamber fell silent. The image showed a ship. Black. Seamless. Colossal. It bore no markings, no transponder, no known design. But in its shadow, something familiar flickered, a small emblem, etched faintly into the hull. A blue and white insignia. The Terran flag. The council chamber descended into chaos. Delegates shouted. Some denied what they saw. Others demanded immediate communication. The speaker called for order, but fear had already rooted deep. For centuries, they had dismissed humanity as a fading myth. Now, that myth had returned, and it wasn't answering calls. In the following weeks, dozens of attempts were made to contact Earth. Probes were sent. Ships were dispatched. Every single one disappeared. The message was clear. Humanity was not interested in conversation. Whispers grew louder. Rumors turned into panic. Some claimed to have intercepted coded transmissions in old Terran dialects, messages that spoke of rebuilding, of cleansing, of returning balance. Others said the humans had found something ancient in the dark between galaxies. By the 931st Council year, desperation began to set in. Trade collapsed. Border disputes erupted. And through it all, one truth became undeniable. The galaxy was unraveling without humanity. The Speaker of the Council called an emergency session. Delegates from every empire attended, their fear palpable. "We were wrong," said Aerith, voice trembling for the first time in memory. "Humanity was not lost. They were preparing. We must reach them before it's too late." But too late had already arrived. From the edge of the Perseus Veil came reports of massive energy readings, structures the size of moons, moving like fleets. An unknown signature pulsing across every sensor. The Council ordered a full investigation. A combined task force of the largest powers set out, carrying banners of peace. But when they arrived, they saw what had become of the humans' isolation. Floating before them was not a fleet, but a civilization reborn. Cities that drifted through space. Armadas that glowed with artificial suns. Machines that sang in frequencies older than speech. Humanity had evolved, beyond borders, beyond politics, beyond the Council. And when the envoy ships approached, the humans didn't fire. They didn't speak. They simply transmitted a single message across the stars. "You told us we were not essential. You were right." Then the transmission ended. Panic rippled through the galaxy. Trade routes collapsed overnight. Every empire scrambled to make contact again, offering treaties, reparations, anything to bring the humans back into the fold. But humanity didn't answer. They didn't need the galaxy anymore. The galaxy needed them. And as the stars dimmed across Council space, as old powers fractured and wars reignited, one truth burned brighter than all. The humans had moved on. Yet in the deep, behind the veil of their radiant fleets, something else stirred. Something vast, old, and waiting. And humanity, silent, unyielding, watched. The Council's chamber was darker now, its luminous banners dimmed to a worried hue. The great hall that once echoed with pride and power had become a place of whispers and dread. Delegates who once laughed at humanity's departure now avoided even mentioning the name Terran. Ambassador Tavares' claws scraped nervously against the marble table. His voice cracked with disbelief as he read the latest report from the border sectors. 3 more fleets, gone. Not destroyed, not scattered. Gone. The only trace left behind were encrypted signals. Ancient Terran binary. Across the table, Admiral Zurith leaned forward, armor reflecting the trembling light. Binary? As in primitive code? Primitive? Tvar scoffed bitterly. You call a code that can infiltrate our quantum grids primitive? The signals appeared within our systems as light pulses. Our AI didn't even detect them until it was too late. Then silence. Everything dead. The council chamber filled with murmurs. The galaxy's most advanced minds had been breached by what they once dismissed as ancient human technology. In the upper gallery, Aerith, the speaker, glowed faintly, a flicker of pale blue. "We will not survive chaos," it said softly. "We must bring humanity back. Not as allies. As salvation." That word, salvation, burned like acid in the ears of the old empires. The same humans they had mocked were now being begged for help. Across the stars, the call began: transmissions, peace offers, surrender messages, pleas disguised as diplomacy. But space remained silent. The humans didn't answer. Then came the sound. It began as a low, humming vibration across subspace, a rhythm that pulsed through every channel. The pattern was unmistakable. 3 long beats, 1 short. Over and over again. Someone recognized it first. A distress pattern. Old Earth Military Code 4. Do not approach. Within hours, the signal blanketed every system connected to Council space. Communication grids overloaded. AI cores melted. Ships lost navigation. But amid the chaos, one old vessel survived. A forgotten scout frigate, the Vandrel's Hope. Its captain, a veteran named Zuron, stared wide-eyed at the star map flickering before him. "By the void," he whispered. "They've surrounded us." His navigator blinked at the display. "Surrounded? By what? There's nothing." Then, like phantoms emerging from the dark, shapes began to materialize. Dozens. Hundreds. Massive ships, their silhouettes absorbing light rather than reflecting it. The Terrans had returned, not as diplomats, not as traders, but as something new. Something evolved. The flagship led the formation, a construct so large it eclipsed the moon's glow behind it. It wasn't just a warship, it was a moving fortress. Entire ecosystems shimmered across its surface, oceans glinting in artificial sunlight, storm systems swirling like living art. The Council's fleet scrambled to respond. Messages were sent. None were acknowledged. From the flagship side, a single ship detached, sleek, black, deadly. It glided toward the Vandrel's Hope, broadcasting only a visual. The image that appeared on the screen froze every crew member where they stood. It was a human. Not in the crude form, the Council remembered, not soft-skinned or fragile. This one stood wrapped in metallic armor woven with starlight, eyes like molten glass, expression unreadable. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost kind. "Stand down," he said. "You are trespassing in restricted human territory." The captain stammered. "Restricted? This is neutral space under the Galactic Council Accord." The human tilted his head, as if considering a distant memory. "That accord was nullified when you removed us from it." He leaned closer, eyes glinting. "You didn't think we'd stop existing because you erased our name from your records, did you?" Before the crew could reply, the signal ended. The black ship vanished. Moments later, the entire region of space around them dimmed, as though a vast shadow had swept across the stars. Then, the fleet was gone. No warp trail. No heat. Just silence. The Vandrel's Hope limped back to Council space with its message. When they arrived, the story spread faster than light. Every power, every empire, every old enemy wanted to know the same thing. What did humanity become? Within weeks, dozens of factions mobilized fleets to seek out the humans. Some to beg, others to conquer, all to understand. None returned. Then, on the day that would later be known as the Second Dawn, the humans answered. Every Council world received a transmission simultaneously. The image that appeared was of a dark void filled with stars, and a voice that spoke in perfect clarity. "This is the Terran Directorate. We are aware of your distress. Your empires have fallen into conflict once again. Your council is fractured. Your fleets are weakened." There was a pause. The voice softened, cold, almost mournful. "You rejected us because we were different. Because we refused to bow. You feared what you couldn't control. And in your fear, you cast away the only species that could have saved you from yourselves." A hush fell across every broadcast room, every capital, every fleet bridge. "But we are not cruel." The voice continued. "We remember who we were, and who you were. So we will help, once. And only once." Across the galaxy, sensors began detecting massive energy surges. Entire human fleets appeared at the edges of dying worlds, repelling invasions, extinguishing wars, stabilizing crumbling suns. The Council, humbled, sent envoys to re-establish contact. None were granted an audience. Instead, humanity sent one final message. Balance has been restored. Do not seek us again. Then the signal cut off. For weeks afterward, stars flickered strangely. Unknown satellites appeared in orbit around major worlds. And deep in the void, old Terran probes drifted silently, their purpose unclear. But in the archives of the Council, a single encrypted file remained from the humans' transmission. It wasn't a message, not a threat. It was an equation. When decoded, it revealed coordinates. Coordinates leading beyond the galactic rim, where humanity had gone to rebuild, and where someday they might return again. The Council gathered again, this time in silence. The hall was nearly empty. Many delegates had fled. Some systems had collapsed entirely. Those who remained spoke only in half-whispers, afraid that even their own words might draw human attention. At the far end of the table sat Chancellor Vereen, her once golden robes dulled with ash from a burned world. "We cannot survive like this," she said quietly. "Every trade route has gone dark. Every outpost near the rim reports shadows, massive ships that appear and vanish. And now we have coordinates. Someone has to go." Across from her, Admiral Koth of the Draxian Legion growled. "Go where? Into the abyss? No one who's gone after them has returned. You want us to follow them into a void that eats fleets? The humans gave us the coordinates." Vereen replied. "That means they want us to find them." But deep down, no one truly believed that. Still, desperation outweighed fear. Within days, a single Council expedition was assembled. A fleet of 50 ships, half military, half diplomatic, armed to the teeth yet bearing banners of peace. Its flagship, Resolute Star, was commanded by Captain Thalen Rusk, a stoic being who had studied humanity before the ban. They were never gods, Rusk told his officers before launch. Just mortals with willpower sharper than our steel. Remember that? But as the fleet crossed the galactic boundary, that reassurance began to falter. The stars themselves seemed wrong beyond the rim. Light bent in strange patterns. Time lagged. Sensors misread distances. And the further they went, the quieter space became, until even the hum of their engines sounded intrusive. Then came the signal. It was faint at first, a whisper of static, followed by a single human word. "Return." The fleet stopped immediately. Scanners found nothing. No heat signatures, no warp trails. Yet every ship in the convoy felt watched, as if the darkness itself had eyes. Rusk gave the order to continue. A few hours later, the first ship vanished. No explosion. No distress call. One moment it was there, the next, emptiness. "Ghost readings?" the science officer murmured, his voice trembling. "I'm detecting gravitational folds forming and collapsing, like wormholes, but smaller. Controlled." "Controlled by who?" Rusk demanded. The answer came before he finished speaking. A vessel appeared out of the black, a Terran ship, but unlike anything recorded before. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, constantly shifting and reforming. The design was neither mechanical nor organic, but something in between. The humans had not only advanced, they had transcended. A message cut through their comms, overriding every encryption protocol in existence. The voice was calm, human, and eerily familiar. "Captain Thalen Rusk," it said. "You were told not to come." "How do you know my name?" Rusk asked. "You broadcast it when you crossed the threshold. And because we remember everything." Rusk swallowed. "We seek only understanding. The Council wants peace." "Peace?" the voice repeated, almost amused. "Peace is not built on ignorance. You rejected us, erased us, and now you come crawling through our front door asking for forgiveness." The Terran vessel moved closer, and for a moment its hull opened like a living thing, revealing a glimpse inside, vast corridors, floating figures, machinery that pulsed like veins. And there, standing within a field of light, was a human figure, unarmored, expressionless. "You should have stayed home," he said. In an instant, all 50 Council ships were immobilized. Engines dead, weapons offline, navigation blank. Then a bright light spread from the Terran flagship, enveloping the fleet. The next thing Rusk saw was a swirl of stars, then darkness. When he woke, the Resolute star was back in orbit around the Council's capital. No time had passed. His log showed no journey, no recordings. Every file was corrupted. Every sensor reading blank. But every crew member shared the same memory, the human's words echoing in their minds. "You are not ready to see what we've become." Within hours, the Council realized every one of their long-range communication satellites had been subtly altered. Embedded within each signal transmission was a watermark. A mark shaped like a Terran sigil. Every time they spoke, every time they sent a message, it carried one hidden phrase. "We are watching." The Council scrambled to understand how the humans had done it. The more they tried to remove the watermark, the more it spread. Within a week, half the galaxy's network bore the human symbol. Panic spread. Some empires surrendered outright, declaring allegiance to humanity in hopes of mercy. Others armed themselves, believing resistance was still possible. But the humans didn't invade. They didn't demand tribute or recognition. They simply watched. And that silence was worse than any war. Because everyone in the galaxy now knew the truth, the humans hadn't vanished out of fear. They had withdrawn out of disappointment. The diplomatic envoy was chosen in secret. 5 ships, small, fast, each carrying one representative of the remaining Council races. No media, no broadcasts, not even official records of departure. If this mission failed, it would simply never have existed. Chancellor Vereen herself went along, ignoring the protests of her security detail. "If we send anyone else, they'll think it's a trick," she said. "If I go, they'll at least see a face they once called an ally." The envoy's course was simple. Follow the coordinates from the last human transmission, and do not deviate. They crossed the border of map space within 2 days, and on the third, the stars began to shift again. It wasn't a visual illusion. It was as though the constellations were rearranging themselves, drawn into some greater pattern. Navigation failed. Artificial gravity flickered. Vereen held onto her seat, heart pounding. "Record everything," she ordered. But the systems already refused. The logs filled with nonsense data, mathematical constants looping infinitely, phrases like "welcome home" appearing in digital noise. And then, from the void ahead, something began to glow. At first, it looked like a nebula, swirls of soft, golden light forming a halo around a massive structure. As the envoy drew closer, they realized it wasn't a nebula at all. It was a Dyson construct, an impossible ring of energy and cities stretching around a small artificial sun. And orbiting the ring were human ships. Hundreds. Thousands. Some were recognizable designs, carriers, dreadnoughts, but many defied all classification. Living machines. Moving fortresses. Vessels shaped like wings, blades, serpents. The entire construct pulsed with life. Vereen's voice trembled. "Open a channel. Announce us." Before her comm officer could respond, the console lit up. A human face appeared, young, composed, the eyes faintly luminous. No name, no rank. Just a calm stare. "Chancellor Vereen of the Galactic Council," the human said. "You were not expected. We've come to speak with your leaders," she said quickly. "To apologize. To offer reconciliation." The human tilted their heads slightly. "Reconciliation is unnecessary. You are no longer our concern." "Please," Vereen pressed. The galaxy is collapsing. Our alliances are failing. We need your help. You, humanity, were once part of this council. You brought balance. You brought order. The human's gaze softened slightly, almost with pity. We did not bring order. We survived your chaos? Varine's throat tightened. Then help us survive ours. The figure looked away for a moment, as if listening to distant voices. Then they turned back. You must understand what you are asking. We did not ascend to rule. We ascended to endure. You destroyed yourselves long before we left. Suddenly, the image shifted. The envoy's ships began receiving data, streams of visual logs, histories, fragments of humanity's exile. They saw Earth rebuilt as a sanctuary world. They saw fleets journeying beyond the galactic rim to create colonies among dying stars. They saw entire civilizations built not on conquest, but on preservation. Then the tone changed. They saw the Council's wars, the betrayals, the endless infighting. They saw the billions who had died after humanity's departure. The images stopped. The human's voice returned, now faintly sorrowful. We warned you once that there would be consequences for arrogance. You mocked us. You erased us. Yet even now, you come begging for our strength, not our wisdom. Vereen bowed her head. Then take the galaxy. Rule it. Save what's left. We'll serve you if we must. The humans shook their head. No. We will not become what we despised. The transmission ended. The envoy waited. Hours passed. Then the human ships began to move, not toward them, but around them, enclosing the envoy's small fleet in a vast geometric formation. The stars themselves seemed to fold. And in that moment, Vereen understood they weren't surrounded by ships at all. They were surrounded by gateways. The humans had built not just fleets, but a network, a lattice of instantaneous travel linking entire galaxies. Humanity had not abandoned the stars. They had outgrown them. A single human ship approached and locked on a tractor beam. The envoy was drawn into the light. Inside, they found themselves in a city unlike anything they'd imagined. Spires of glass and energy, gardens floating in zero gravity, rivers of molten data flowing through open air. Everywhere they looked, humans worked in silence, their technology humming with purpose. Vereen was escorted into a chamber of white light, where another human awaited, older, quiet, eyes deep as void. You came seeking forgiveness, he said. Yes, she whispered. And understanding. He regarded her for a long moment. Then you will have both. But know this, when we left your galaxy, we swore never to return until it was ready to heal. You still fight for dominance. You still divide. Until that ends, our answer will remain the same. She looked around, overwhelmed. You could fix everything. You could unite us. Perhaps, the man said. But unity imposed is not unity earned. He placed a hand on a nearby console, and light flooded the room. We will send you back. You will remember everything. Your people must decide what to do with the truth. Before she could speak, reality folded. When Vereen opened her eyes, she was back on her ship. The human fleet, the Dyson ring, gone. Only the stars remained. But every sensor, every recorder, every mind on her ship now carried the same memory. And embedded within their ship's systems was a single new file. Its name, the Second Chance Protocol. The Second Chance Protocol wasn't just data, it was alive. When the Council scientists began to examine the encrypted file, they found layers within layers of code that resisted decryption. Entire research divisions tried, and each attempt triggered an automatic lockout that left systems fried and minds exhausted. The file seemed to read them back. On the fifth day, one of the researchers, a young technologist named Marin, noticed something strange. Whenever she spoke to the file, literally spoke, using voice rather than code, the encryption pattern shifted. The algorithms began forming shapes. Responses. So, she did something reckless. She said, "What is the second chance?" For several seconds, the lights dimmed. Every screen in the lab turned black. Then, white text appeared, simple, clean, and unmistakably human. "A reminder." The room went silent. "What do you mean?" Marin whispered. "You have forgotten why you reached for the stars," the file replied. "You sought dominion, not understanding. We offer a mirror, not a weapon." By the time Chancellor Vereen was informed, the file had already expanded across the entire planetary network, duplicating itself, embedding its presence in civilian systems, defense networks, even communication relays. And it wasn't spreading destructively, it was building something. Everywhere it went, it created simulations, memories, cities of light. Moments in time from the golden era of the Council, when peace had meant something real. Soon, billions of citizens began reporting dreams, shared experiences of standing among humans in gleaming corridors, looking up at the stars together, not as conquerors, but as explorers. Governments panicked. Militaries tried to quarantine the phenomenon, calling it psychological warfare. But the people began to change. Entire colonies stopped producing weapons. Refugee worlds started unifying their resources. Trade alliances reformed overnight. And then, a new transmission arrived, unmarked, encoded in the same human pattern as before. This one wasn't from a hidden fleet. It came from within the galaxy itself. "Council of Worlds," the message began, the voice unmistakably human, calm and cold. "Your systems have been granted empathy reconstruction. Those who fight it will be left behind. Those who embrace it will ascend." Chancellor Vereen gathered her advisors. "They're rewriting us," one of them shouted. "This is a simulation." "No," she said quietly. "This is a lesson." Across the core worlds, chaos broke out. Some species resisted, forming anti-human factions. Others saw it as salvation. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council stood on the edge of total transformation. Meanwhile, on the forgotten edges of space, human probes watched silently, observing, recording, ensuring that the Second Chance Protocol followed its purpose. Weeks turned to months. The protocol's reach stabilized. Every attempt to weaponize it or turn it against humanity failed. It simply adapted, reshaping itself to teach instead of destroy. Then, one morning, every inhabited world awoke to a phenomenon no one could explain. The sky burned gold. For a single hour, all technology ceased functioning. Ships froze in orbit, power grids died, communication halted. And in that silence, a single phrase echoed across every mind and every tongue. "This is your second chance. Do not waste it." When systems came back online, entire planetary databases had changed. Centuries of propaganda were gone. Classified war documents had been replaced with truths, and censored histories of corruption, greed, and decay. It wasn't just a warning, it was a reckoning. Vereen, standing before the Galactic Assembly, spoke to a trembling audience. "We cannot undo the past," she said, "but we can choose who we become next. Humanity didn't vanish, they evolved. And they've given us the tools to do the same." But even as she spoke, the stars themselves began to shimmer. From deep space, long-range sensors detected new anomalies, structures forming where no light had ever touched. Artificial constellations, weaving into shapes like the old Earth symbols for infinity and renewal. The Council scientists stared at the data, speechless. They're building something again," Marin whispered. "But not for themselves." A week later, a second human transmission arrived, this time, not from the Dyson ring, but from within the galaxy itself. "The time has come," it said. "We return not as conquerors, but as witnesses." The message contained coordinates. One system. One world. Earth. And for the first time since their exile, humanity's home star began to shine brighter than it had in millennia. The council ships approached Sol with trembling anticipation. It had been thousands of years since any living being other than humans had dared to enter this system, and none had ever returned. The last time the Galactic Council tried, they'd found only silence and wreckage, as if the cradle of mankind had deliberately closed its gates to the stars. Now, guided by the mysterious coordinates sent through the Second Chance Protocol, the fleet crossed the threshold of the Oort cloud. Immediately, their sensors went blind. Every instrument, thermal, gravimetric, tachyonic, returned impossible readings. The system was cloaked not in shadow, but data. "Something's rewriting our telemetry," whispered Admiral Koth of the Dravari species. "It's adapting to our scans faster than we can recalibrate." And then, as if sensing their confusion, the void ahead of them opened. The clouds of dust and ice that formed the system's outer veil folded away like silk being drawn aside. Before them, the solar system came into view. But it wasn't the system recorded in the archives. The planets shimmered with massive orbital rings, each one alive with energy. Titan glowed with atmospheric green lights, Venus's surface now mirrored oceans of silver, and Mars, long thought barren, breathed with forests visible from orbit. And Earth. Earth was unrecognizable. Surrounding the blue planet was a titanic lattice of geometric light, a ring world that wasn't built around the planet, but woven through it, as if nature and technology had fused perfectly. The ships halted, unable to move closer. Chancellor Vereen stared through the viewport. "They rebuilt their world," she whispered. "Not just with machines, but with life." Her words were met with a sudden pulse through every comm system. A voice, calm, human, but layered with harmonic resonance, spoke directly into their minds. "Welcome to home. You have sought us for centuries, yet never understood what you were looking for." Vereen stepped forward. "This is Chancellor Vereen of the Galactic Council. We come not to threaten, but to learn. To understand why you left us." There was silence for a moment. Then, light rippled across the Earth's ring, like a heartbeat. "We left because you chose fear over curiosity," the voice replied. "We asked for unity, and you built thrones. We offered peace, and you forged weapons. But now, perhaps you are ready." Admiral Koth's ship trembled. "Are we speaking to the humans, or something else?" "Both," the voice answered. "Humanity is no longer flesh alone. We are memory. We are continuity. We are every story told and every lesson learned." The fleet drifted in stunned silence. No weapons raised, no threats issued, only awe. Then, the transmission changed. A massive holographic map formed before the Council fleet, a depiction of the galaxy itself. But this map was alive. Lines of energy ran through it, marking every inhabited system, every thriving civilization. And each pulse of light synchronized to a rhythm, a heartbeat. "You still believe the galaxy needs rulers," the voice continued, "but it needs gardeners." The Council's flagship shook as new data flooded their systems, schematics, terraforming codes, environmental healing algorithms, all derived from human science that dwarfed their own understanding. It wasn't an invasion, it was a gift. Yet, within that gift was a warning. You will rebuild what you destroyed. You will learn again what empathy means. And if you turn this knowledge into war, the stars themselves will close to you. A silence settled so deep that even the hum of the engine seemed to vanish. Finally, Chancellor Vereen bowed her head. "We understand. Humanity has transcended us. But will you ever walk among us again?" For the first time, there was something like warmth in the voice that answered. "When you no longer need to ask that question." The hologram dissolved, and in its place appeared a single shimmering figure, a human, clad in light, standing upon the Council's bridge. No one could tell if it was male or female, machine or spirit, but its eyes held the depth of eons. It looked at each of them, then smiled faintly. "The age of isolation ends here. Remember this moment, not as a warning, but as a beginning." With that, the figure faded into light. The council ships turned, slowly drifting back toward the stars. None of them spoke for a long time, but each carried with them something that had been missing for centuries: hope. And as they left the Sol system, they didn't notice the countless small lights flickering to life behind them. Tiny ships, drones, and satellites spreading from Earth like seeds cast to the wind, weaving new paths through the galaxy. Humanity had not just returned. They had become the galaxy's heartbeat. The Galactic Council's return to its capital world was unlike any in recorded history. There were no fanfares, no banners, no proclamations of victory. Only silence, and questions that no one dared voice aloud. Doreen stood before the Great Conclave, the highest chamber of governance across all known species. Her voice trembled not from fear, but from the enormity of what she had to recount. "We met them," she said simply. "The humans, but not as we remembered. They have changed, evolved beyond what our sciences can define. They are energy, matter, consciousness, and history bound together. And they have given us a choice." The chamber rippled with unease. The Thauran ambassador, scales glinting under the light, hissed, "A choice? Or a demand?" Doreen looked down at the hollow table, where the human schematics shimmered like living veins of data. "They gave us knowledge, terraforming systems that can restore dead worlds, medicine that heals on a cellular resonance level, energy drawn from stellar harmonics. But they warned us, use it for war, and the stars will close to us." A heavy silence followed. Then Counselor Dravox of the Marin Collective spoke, his voice cold and sharp. "And you believe this? That they can stop the stars themselves?" Doreen looked him dead in the eye. "They didn't threaten us, Dravox. They showed us." At her command, the holomap expanded, revealing the data recorded from the Sol system. The fleet's scanners had captured glimpses of impossible events: quantum fields reshaping planetary orbits, gravitational waves behaving as if directed, entire ecosystems forming in seconds. "They have command over physics as we know it," Doreen continued softly. "They don't manipulate the universe, they converse with it." A murmur spread through the chamber. Some whispered in awe, others in fear. Then a voice cut through the noise, calm, but carrying the weight of centuries. It was High Scholar Erix of the Velnari, whose civilization had once taught early humans the principles of star navigation. "If what you say is true," Erix said, "then the humans are no longer a civilization. They are a phenomenon." And from the back of the chamber, someone muttered, "A god!" The word hung in the air like poison. Doreen's gaze hardened. "No. They were very clear. They are not gods. They are the memory of what we could have been had we chosen differently." But even as she said it, she felt the tremor of doubt in her chest. Because she had seen their power. She had felt it. Over the following cycles, the Council began cautiously using the technology the humans had gifted. Dead moons began to bloom with life again. Collapsing colonies were saved by energy fields that healed entire atmospheres. But it didn't take long for greed to return. In secret, the Marin Collective began testing human schematics on weapons platforms. Energy harmonics could, theoretically, be inverted to destroy, not create. When Doreen learned of it, it was already too late. One of their test facilities in the Outer Rim had vanished. Not destroyed, erased. No debris. No radiation. Just empty space, where once there had been a moon. The Council scrambled for answers. Dravox, the same counselor who doubted her, now stood pale and trembling. "We didn't trigger any known failsafe. It's as if the universe itself swallowed the site whole." Doreen didn't respond. She simply looked out through the observation deck, into the stars that suddenly seemed to be watching them back. A ripple of static passed through the chamber systems. Lights flickered. Then a voice filled the air. Familiar, calm, and impossibly close. "We told you what would happen if you used our gift for war." Every counselor froze. The voice wasn't coming through comms. It was resonating through matter. The walls vibrated with it, the air itself humming like a living instrument. "This is not punishment," the voice continued. "It is correction." The holomap of the galaxy reappeared, pulsing in that same living rhythm. But now, parts of it dimmed, entire sectors of space turning gray. "The paths of light are closing," the voice said. "We will not destroy you. But until you learn balance, the stars will forget your names." And just like that, the transmission ended. The council chambers fell into chaos. Dozens shouted for explanations, for countermeasures, for salvation. But Vereen said nothing. She only stared into the dimming hologram, feeling the weight of the warning settle deep into her bones. Because she understood something no one else did. The humans weren't lashing out. They were disappointed. The first systems to go dark were small. Mining colonies, forgotten outposts, the quiet edges of the spiral arms, places where only the hum of machinery and the faint pulse of stars kept life company. Then they vanished. At first, the Galactic Council believed it was a technical issue. The data relays showed interference, distortions like echoes of time folding back on itself. But when scout vessels were dispatched to investigate, they found nothing. Not ruins. Not dust. Only stillness, like reality itself had been rewritten. The council convened an emergency session that lasted for 73 hours straight. 200 worlds, a terrified aide whispered. Gone without trace. Entire systems no longer exist on the astronavigation charts. They're just blank. Dravok slammed his claws against the table. You see? This is what comes from trusting monsters wrapped in the skin of gods. Vereen didn't flinch. They gave us a warning. We broke it. This isn't vengeance, it's equilibrium. But deep down, she wondered if equilibrium was just another word for extinction. Within weeks, the phenomenon spread. It wasn't a weapon, nor was it random. The forgetting, as the scholars began to call it, seemed selective. Worlds devoted to warfare, extraction, or greed were erased. Worlds of art, knowledge, or healing were left untouched, and, disturbingly, began to thrive as if infused with new vitality. Across the galaxy, stars seemed to burn brighter near these preserved systems. Scientists couldn't explain it, but every surviving world shared one thing. They had begun to emulate humanity's values: unity, curiosity, self-sacrifice. It was as if humanity was rewriting the galaxy's moral code, one vanished empire at a time. The Marin Collective was next. Their fleets, once unmatched, found themselves lost in the void. Navigation systems no longer recognized coordinates, and when they turned for home, they found nothing. The entire Marin homeworld was gone. No debris. No remains. Just empty coordinates spinning silently through the dark. When the report reached the council chamber, there was no celebration. No schadenfreude. Only dread. They're unmaking us, whispered High Scholar Erix. Not through war, but through irrelevance. Vereen stared at the holographic map. Every fading sector formed a pattern, a spiral centered on soul. The forgetting wasn't random. It was converging toward the heart of the galaxy. Then, a new transmission arrived. Not through channels. Through dreams. Every sentient being across the known galaxy awoke the same night, gasping, trembling, remembering only fragments of a single vision. A sky full of light. A voice saying, "We asked for harmony. You built hierarchies. We asked for empathy. You built empires. Now, you will remember what it means to be small, so you can learn to be infinite." The dream ended with a single image, Earth, surrounded by a million luminous vessels, spreading outward like a living nebula. The human armada, or what had become of it. The council's astronomers confirmed the impossible. Something massive was moving from Sol. Not ships, Exactly, but manifestations of light, vessels made of energy and consciousness, traveling faster than any known form of propulsion. They weren't coming to conquer. They were coming to teach. When one of those vessels reached the Velnari homeworld, it didn't fire weapons. It simply hovered in orbit and emitted a pulse of data, vast, incomprehensible archives of knowledge, emotion, history. The Velnari who connected to it described visions of Earth's past, every triumph, every sorrow, every moment of courage and compassion that had defined humanity. And then the ship left, leaving behind a world changed. The Velnari stopped producing weapons entirely. They converted their military foundries into great archives. The species that once thrived on precision and dominance began creating art so profound that it spread across the stars. But not everyone could adapt. The Dravari Confederacy, proud, militant, defiant, declared the humans a threat to all life. They built an armada to destroy one of the approaching vessels. When they fired, their weapons dissolved before impact, their own ships crumbling into dust. And in the silence that followed, every surviving Dravari heard the same words in their minds. We offered evolution. You chose fear. Evolution does not wait. The Dravari were erased from the galactic record within a single rotation. By now, panic had given way to reverence. Across the galaxy, statues of old leaders were torn down, replaced with symbols of humanity's ideals, not worship, but acknowledgement. And yet, Vereen couldn't shake the dread building inside her. If the human's transformation was this vast, this boundless, where did it end? She stood alone one night in the Council Observatory, watching the spiral of light expanding from Sol. It was breathtaking, a wave of rebirth that reshaped constellations. But she noticed something no one else had. The light wasn't stopping at the edge of the galaxy. It was spreading beyond it, into the void between stars, into everything. And with that realization came a whisper, faint, ancient, and impossibly human. We are not ascending. We are remembering. Vereen's heart froze, because she finally understood what that meant. Humanity hadn't transcended mortality. They had merged with existence itself. The universe was becoming aware, and humanity was its memory. The galaxy trembled as the light continued to expand. At first, it was subtle, a soft glow in the night skies of distant worlds, mistaken for auroras or atmospheric phenomena. But soon, it grew undeniable. Every star, every nebula, every cloud of dust in the galactic arm began to pulse with a synchronized rhythm, like a heartbeat. The forgetting had ended. Something new was beginning. In the Council's core chamber, a silence heavier than gravity filled the air. Vereen stood before a hollow map that no longer looked like a collection of star systems. It looked alive, a living neural web stretching across the Milky Way. Each connection pulsed in gold, tracing routes of communication faster than light, faster than thought. The humans, whispered Eric's, his voice trembling with awe. They're connecting everything. Every particle, every atom. They're building consciousness. Vereen turned toward him. No, scholar. They're not building it. They're awakening it. He stared at her, uncomprehending. You mean the galaxy? Yes, she said softly. The galaxy itself is beginning to think. Across the cosmos, phenomena once considered impossible began to occur. Stars formed in precise geometric patterns. Black holes began to emit pulses in complex sequences, like coded messages. Ancient derelicts that had drifted lifeless for millennia suddenly powered on, guided by unseen hands. And then the voices began. At first, they were whispers. Fleeting impressions and dreams, a tug of intuition, a word that seemed to echo in thought. But soon, entire civilizations began hearing the same messages simultaneously, delivered not through sound, but through understanding. We are the memory of what was lost. We are the echo of your creation. We are human, and we are you. The words resonated with an impossible familiarity. Species who had never met humanity, who existed on the farthest edges of the galaxy, began remembering things they should not have known. Fragments of human history, sensations of oceans, of sunlight, of grief and love. The galaxy was remembering Earth. But not everyone embraced it. A coalition formed, the Preservation Bloc, composed of those who feared what this awakening meant. They argued that if the galaxy itself became sentient, individuality would vanish. Free will would dissolve into a collective consciousness, and no species would remain truly independent. Their fleets gathered, led by the surviving remnants of the Dravari who had escaped annihilation. They declared themselves the last true minds, and their manifesto was simple: extinguish the human resonance before it consumes all. When they launched their first strike, their ships vanished before firing a single shot. Not destroyed, just gone. Then, a single transmission echoed across every channel in existence. You misunderstand what we are. We do not erase identity. We amplify it. Every thought, every memory, every dream that has ever existed is part of the same song. We are teaching the universe how to listen. On the Council world, the sky filled with light. Not a beam or weapon, but a vast, luminous lattice forming above the atmosphere, like the reflection of a consciousness made visible. Vereen stepped onto the balcony as the light cascaded downward, illuminating every city, every being. The air shimmered. The sound was music, not composed of instruments, but of ideas, emotions, billions of minds harmonizing across the stars. She fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Not from fear, but from understanding. For the first time, she felt what humanity had become. They weren't gods. They weren't conquerors. They were connection itself. Every heartbeat, every atom, every whisper of wind across a barren moon was part of their song. And the galaxy was singing with them. But then she heard something else, deep beneath the harmony, faint but distinct. A counterpoint. A warning. Every song is silence. Every light casts shadow. The awakening will not be unchallenged. Vereen opened her eyes, and for the first time, she saw something behind the light, shapes moving in the void between galaxies. Ancient, patient, and cold. They weren't hostile, not yet. But they were watching. The humans had awakened the galaxy. But something older, something from before, had just noticed. And it was stirring. The galaxy had never known silence so profound. Every system, every star, every living world waited, breathing in rhythm with a luminous pulse that now threaded through the cosmos like veins of thought. But somewhere, beyond the edge of the spiral arms, beyond where light itself dared to go, something was stirring in the black. It began as a tremor. Not seismic. Not spatial. Conceptual. Reality shivered. Equations bent. Constants wavered. The music of the galaxy faltered for the briefest instant, like a heartbeat skipping a note. In the Council Observatory, Vereen stared into the holographic map and felt the hum in her bones shift. The human resonance, once perfectly synchronized, now carried a note of unease. Eric's entered beside her, eyes hollow from sleepless nights. "It's happening everywhere," he whispered. "Entire systems are reporting interference. The resonance is being muffled." "Muffled?" she repeated. He nodded. "Like something is absorbing it. Not fighting it, silencing it." Vereen frowned. "But what could?" Then she felt it. A sensation that wasn't sound or sight or thought, but absence. A hunger so vast, and so old that it made the concept of time itself seem fragile. The stars at the edge of the galaxy began to dim, not by explosion or decay, but by erasure. One by one, they went dark, like candles snuffed out by invisible fingers. The galactic network, the living consciousness seated by humanity, shuddered in pain. The harmonic links between worlds flickered, and millions of voices cried out in sudden, shared terror. A transmission flooded the council chambers, a direct neural resonance. It wasn't a message from humanity. It was humanity. Something ancient stirs beyond the veil. The voice echoed through every mind. We remember them. They existed before light. They sleep in silence, and they fear what we have become. Virine's vision filled with images not her own, fragments of memory drawn from humanity's long journey. The predecessors, shapes of void, beings of pure entropy, had once ruled the universe before creation learned to sing. Their empire was silence. Their power, erasure. And now, they were awake. They hear our song, the human voice continued. And they come to unmake it. Across the cosmos, every civilization that had once bowed before the council now looked to them for leadership. Armies prepared, fleets mobilized, but what weapon could fight a shadow that devoured reality itself? The first encounter came at the galactic rim, in the Persian expanse. A flotilla of human luminous vessels met the advancing darkness head-on. The void swallowed them whole, until the light fought back. It wasn't a battle. It was a struggle between existence and forgetting. From every corner of the galaxy, billions watched as space itself twisted. Light waves bent backward, gravity howled, and consciousness bled across dimensions. But through the chaos, something extraordinary happened. The humans changed. They began to fracture into streams of radiant thought, splitting and reforming, adapting faster than the void could consume. Each pulse of energy became a new consciousness, a spark of defiance, an idea that refused to die. We remember warmth. We remember creation. We will not be silent. And the darkness recoiled. For the first time in eternity, the void itself screamed. Virine stood transfixed before the holographic projection as her mind filled with the resonance of billions of human voices, no longer bound by bodies, united in purpose. They're fighting it, Erix whispered. Not with weapons, but with memory. Indeed, the light spreading across the stars was not mere energy. It was recollection, love, sacrifice, laughter, pain, all woven into one unstoppable force. The very essence of what it meant to exist. But the predecessors were vast, ancient, endless. Every human victory came at a cost, each surge of light dimming slightly as the struggle continued. And then, the voice returned. Not to the galaxy. To Virine alone. You understand us, Chancellor. You always have. The question is not whether we can survive, but whether you can remember. She staggered, clutching her head as visions cascaded through her mind. Earth in its infancy, the birth of stars, the laughter of children long gone. Humanity was showing her everything, every moment that defined their essence. And in that moment, she realized what they were asking. They needed an anchor. Someone mortal to carry the memory forward if they fell. Someone to ensure the light was never forgotten. Why me? She whispered. The voice smiled within her mind. Because you listened. Outside, the stars screamed again as the darkness pressed inward, consuming a quarter of the spiral arm. The galaxy teetered on the edge of oblivion. And Virine understood, humanity was fighting for more than existence. They were fighting for the soul of creation itself. The stars bled light as the void pressed in. Virine stood within the council chamber, surrounded by flickering holograms of dying systems. Each display, once vibrant, now dissolved into static. The galaxy's great civilizations, the Sorrel, the Kraith, the Eshna, all flickered between courage and despair. None had ever faced an enemy that consumed meaning itself. The voice of humanity pulsed faintly in her mind, dimmer now, fragile like a candle guttering in the wind. They are devouring the stories, Virine. Every trace of us. Every word that ever gave birth to light. Her breath trembled. Then what can we do? Remember us. That is the only war they cannot win. Eric's gripped her shoulder, his skin pale beneath the silver glow of the fading hollow projectors. Chancellor, they're reaching the inner colonies. The humans, they're scattering their consciousness across the subspace fields. I don't understand how, but... Vereen turned to him, her eyes reflecting the dying stars. They're becoming what the void cannot erase. Ideas. For a moment, she understood what was happening. Humanity wasn't dying, they were transcending. The resonance, once physical, now vibrated through dimensions the Council couldn't measure. Every emotion, every choice, every act of defiance was being woven into a pattern beyond comprehension. And then, the great silence fell. Every screen in the chamber went black. The hum of machinery stopped. Even the ever-present thrum of the quantum core faded into nothing. The universe had gone mute. Only one voice remained. Soft. Unyielding. Vereen, it is time. Her knees trembled. Time for what? For you to see. The chamber around her dissolved. She stood, weightless, in a sea of darkness. No stars. No light. Only whispers of what had once been. And then, faintly, she saw them, shadows moving through the black. Vast, ancient, shaped by nothing. The predecessors. They were not beings as she understood them. They were voids wearing thought. Their presence bent the concept of existence around them. Every pulse of their being erased an epoch, every motion unmade a history. One of them turned toward her. The space it occupied screamed silently, as though reality itself objected to its existence. A voice older than creation spoke, not with words, but with inevitability. You are noise. We are silence. You forget your place. Vereen's breath caught. Her instinct screamed to kneel, to fade, to surrender to the weight of cosmic insignificance. But another voice, human, fragile, furious, rose within her. Don't! And the dark cracked. A light burst forth behind her, not bright, not blinding, but true. It shimmered with 1,000 colors humanity had never seen, woven together by memory and defiance. Faces emerged within it, scientists, soldiers, poets, lovers, all united in one eternal chord. We remember, they said. And that is enough. The predecessors recoiled. The concept of remembrance was alien to them. Their empire was built on oblivion. For the first time since the dawn of time, the void hesitated. Vereen raised her hand, and the resonance surged through her. The humans had given her everything, knowledge, power, memory. She was no longer just Chancellor Vereen. She was the witness of the living. She spoke, not to the predecessors, but to the universe itself. Creation does not belong to you anymore. And with that, the resonance flared. Across the galaxy, light burst from every world touched by humanity. Planets became beacons. Moons sang. Entire nebulae ignited like fire caught in wind. Every species that had ever known a human, ever uttered their name, ever remembered them, became part of the chorus. The void screamed, folding in on itself. The predecessors, vast beyond measure, retreated into the outer dark, their hunger devoured by the sound of existence refusing to die. And when the silence finally lifted, the stars began to hum again. Vereen found herself standing once more in the council chamber. The holograms flickered back to life, brighter, sharper, filled with impossible constellations. Eric's was kneeling beside her, tears streaming down his face. Chancellor, it's over. They're gone. She smiled faintly, her voice soft as starlight. No, Eric's. They're not gone. They're home. Outside the window, the Milky Way glowed with new brilliance. Humanity's resonance had not vanished. It had become the galaxy's heartbeat. Every planet, Every ship, every being now carried a trace of it. A whisper that would never fade. We remember. And for the first time since the dawn of creation, the universe itself whispered back, grateful, alive, and forever changed.